I made one comment, 15 seconds, off the cuff. Someone asked about the pop culture podcast space, and I said what I thought, which was that it was entertainment for people who didn't want to do the actual reading. I wasn't wrong. I also wasn't prepared for what happened next. He responded, 7 minutes, on air. And he wasn't wrong either, which was the most annoying possible outcome. Our fan bases went to war. Our numbers both went up. I told myself the whole thing was good for the brand. I did not think about him again, much. Then I walked into a modeling shoot, and he was standing there. Not as a model. Apparently Frederick called in a favor. Apparently Orun does not know how to say no to Frederick, which I filed for later. He looked at me the way you look at something you already have an opinion about. I gave him the smile, the one that works. He did not immediately smile back. I found that very interesting. We kept ending up in the same places, the awards, the panel, industry events. He said to my face, on a terrace at midnight, that my confidence was an outside layer. He was right. I didn't tell him that. He already knew. That was the first time someone saw past the outside layer, and I didn't want to leave the room. I bought the ring 3 weeks before I worked up the nerve to say any of this out loud. I carried it in my jacket every day. I had a plan. The plan was good. Then he called me and I could hear something in his voice, and I forgot the plan entirely, and just went. He said it was the worst proposal set up in recorded history. He also said yes. So, my show is called Undefeated. He has never once let me win an argument. I have never once minded. Static and Signal, a love story that started with a comment section war. Welcome to the Portal Library. Step through and let the magic begin. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment if you'd love more stories or have a request. New videos uploaded every Friday. Static and Signal, a BL short story. Chapter 1. Before We Met. The baby shower is loud. Everyone talking at once. Someone's aunt reorganizing the gift table without being asked. 2 separate conversations about names happening simultaneously across the room. Orun is sitting in the big chair they put in the center specifically for him. One hand on his stomach, the other holding a mocktail he keeps forgetting to drink. Urji is beside him, standing close, one hand resting on the back of Orun's seat. It's his friend Demi who asks. She's been working up to it since she arrived. Okay, but I have to know, she says, because I've seen the old clips. You two were at each other's throats online. How did that actually become? She gestures at the room, at Orun's stomach, at Urji, all of this. Orun looks at Urji. Urji looks back at him with the expression he gets when something is Orun's problem to explain. Unhelpful, Orun says. I'm comfortable, Urji says. Orun turns back to Demi. The room has gone a little quieter. People are listening now. Okay, Orun says. Fine, but we're starting from the beginning, so get comfortable. Please, Demi says. Orun takes a sip of his mocktail. So, he says, you know how it started, you were there for some of it. But what you don't know is that I almost missed the whole thing because of a modeling shoot I had no business being at. Actually, no. Back up further. You need to understand what kind of year it had been before any of this happened. 14 months earlier. The episode went up at 7 on a Thursday morning, and by 9 it had 40,000 plays, which for Orun's podcast was a good Thursday. Unfiltered with Orun, the intro went, in the voice he'd recorded 3 years ago when he thought a lower register sounded more professional. No filter, no PR-approved statements, just the receipts. He'd been doing it for 4 years. Started in his apartment with a USB mic and a ring light he'd borrowed from Frederick and never returned. Now he had a proper studio setup, a small team of 2, a listener base that had grown steadily enough to make real money and loudly enough to make real enemies. Urji was the most recent one. It had started 3 weeks ago when Urji, mid-episode of his own show, had been asked about the pop culture podcast space and said without any particular heat that it was entertainment for lazy people just looking for cheap gossip and cannot bother to read a book. The clip circulated within the hour. Orun had been in the middle of editing when his producer sent it to him. He watched it once, closed his laptop, opened it again, and recorded a 7-minute response segment that he dropped into that week's episode without changing a word. I'm not going to name names, he'd said on air, but if your entire brand is yelling statistics over highlight reels, maybe don't come for the people who actually do the cultural analysis. The reading is happening. You're just not the one assigned to it. It got clipped. It got shared. Urgy's comment section filled with Orun's listeners, and Orun's comment section filled with Urgy's. Both of their download numbers went up that week, which was the most annoying possible outcome. Frederick had watched the whole thing unfold from Orun's couch with the detached amusement of someone who had no stake in the outcome. He's not wrong that sports commentary and pop culture commentary are different things, Frederick said. He implied mind doesn't require thought, Orun said. I know, I'm just saying, objectively, Frederick. You won, obviously, Frederick said. 7 minutes versus his 15 seconds. Not close. Orun pointed at him. Frederick smiled and went back to his phone. This was the version of Frederick that most people didn't know existed. Easy, unbothered, genuinely funny when he wanted to be. The model the industry knew was colder, more composed, the kind of face that looked at a camera like the camera owed him something. Around Orun he was different. Had been since they were 17, and Frederick had transferred to Orun's school, and Orun had been the only person who talked to him in the first week without wanting something. That was 13 years ago. Some things calcified over 13 years. You're staying for dinner, Orun said. It wasn't a question. Jordan's coming over later, Frederick said. So I should probably tell him you're at mine. He knows where I live. Frederick looked at his phone for a moment, then he put it face down on the couch cushion. What are we eating? He said. Jordan had known Frederick for 2 years. He'd met him at a casting event for a campaign Frederick was headlining. Jordan was there for a background role and had ended up in 3 shots with Frederick because the photographer kept repositioning people and Jordan kept landing in the frame. Frederick had found this funny. Jordan had found Frederick difficult to look away from, which was not an uncommon experience, but was for Jordan an unusually persistent one. They'd exchanged numbers. Frederick had texted first, which Jordan had not expected. 2 years later, Jordan knew exactly what that text had meant and what it hadn't meant, and had spent a significant amount of time making peace with the distance between those two things. He was 26. He had a recurring role on a daily drama that filmed 3 days a week, and a theater production that ran weekends. He was good at his job in a way that hadn't translated to being known for it yet, which his agent said was a matter of time, and which Jordan had stopped needing to believe in order to keep showing up. He was also, on most Thursday evenings, at Frederick's apartment. Frederick had texted at 9 to say he was staying at Orun's. Jordan had read it, set his phone on the kitchen counter, and made dinner for 1. The comment section stayed active for 2 weeks. Orun had a policy about not reading them, which he followed approximately 60% of the time. The other 40%, he read them in bed at midnight, and then had to actively talk himself out of recording a response. His producer, Leah, had a stricter policy about it on his behalf. Don't, she said, every time. I wasn't going to, Orun said, every time. You were absolutely going to. She was right. He didn't. What he did do was watch Urgy's show for the first time properly, which he told himself was research, and which was at least partially true. Undefeated was, he hated admitting this, even internally, well made. Urgy knew sports the way Orun knew entertainment, and he talked about it like it was the most important thing in the world. It didn't make the comment annoy him any less, though. Orun closed the tab and went to bed. 3 weeks after the comment, Frederick called on a Tuesday afternoon. I need a favor, he said. What kind? Orun said. There's a group shoot tomorrow. Brand campaign for a sports league event. They lost one of the group models this morning, and they need someone to fill in. Background only. Group shots. You won't be a focus. 3 hours max. Frederick, I'm not a model, Orun said. You're photogenic and you know how to be on camera. That's all they need for this. Who's the client? Orun said. A pause that was slightly too long. It's a sports league campaign, Frederick said. You said that. Who's in the shoot? Another pause. Some athletes, a couple other models, some of the commentator faces they use for promotional stuff. Orun sat up straighter. Frederick. It's 3 hours, Frederick said. You'll be in the background. I'll owe you. Is Urgy going to be there? He does some modeling on the side. Yes, but Oran, you won't even have to talk to him, it's a group. You want me to stand next to the person whose comment section has been coming for me for 3 weeks? In a professional context, yes. Oran was quiet for a moment. I'll think about it, Oran said. The shoot starts at 10, Frederick said. I'll text you the address. I said I'll think about it. Frederick texted him the address 11 minutes later. Oran stared at it. Then he went to find something to wear. Back at the baby shower, Demi is leaning forward in her chair. You went, she says. I went, Oran says. Even knowing he'd be there? Frederick said I'd be in the background, Oran says. I believed him. That was my first mistake. Behind him, Urgi makes a sound that is definitely a laugh. You're not helping, Oran says, without turning around. I didn't say anything, Urgi says. Oran looks at Demi. So, the shoot. Chapter 2. First Contact. At the baby shower, someone has refilled Oran's mocktail without him asking. He takes a sip and looks at the ceiling like he's trying to decide how much to tell. So, the shoot, Demi says. The shoot, Oran says. Okay, so you have to understand. I walked in there fully prepared to be invisible. Background model, group shots, in and out. Urgi, still standing behind him, says nothing. His lips move almost to a smile. And then, Demi says impatiently. And then, Oran says, the photographer took one look at us standing next to each other and decided we were the shot. The shoot. 14 months earlier. The studio was a converted warehouse on the east side of the city, the kind of space that looked like nothing from the outside and cost a significant amount per hour once you were inside. Oran had been in enough content spaces to know the difference between a budget setup and a real one. This was a real one. Frederick met him at the entrance with a coffee that was already the right order. You look good, Frederick said. I look like myself, Oran replied with a knowing smirk. That's what I said, Frederick jested and steered him inside. The group was already partially assembled. 4 athletes Oran vaguely recognized from sports coverage, 2 other models he didn't know, a stylist making adjustments to a rack of clothes along the far wall. The photographer was talking to her assistant near the main setup, gesturing at the lighting rig. Urgi was standing near the craft table with a bottle of water, talking to one of the athletes. He was taller than Oran had expected. Not that Oran had thought about what he'd expected. He was also, and this was the part Oran immediately filed under irrelevant, objectively good-looking in the specific way that some people were, like the proportions had been considered. Urgi looked up at roughly the same moment. He did a visible double take. Then he smiled, wide and immediate, the kind of smile that had clearly worked for him many times before. No way, he said, crossing the room. Unfiltered himself, in the flesh. Undefeated, Oran said pleasantly. Big fan of the 15 seconds you put into that comment. Urgi laughed. It was a real laugh, which Oran hadn't expected, loud enough that the photographer looked over. 7 minutes, though, Urgi said. You really had things to say. I had receipts, Oran said. There's a difference. Is there? Yes, one is an opinion, one is facts based on real documentation. Urgi looked at him for a moment with an expression that Oran couldn't categorize quickly, which was unusual. Then the photographer called the group together, and the moment passed. Frederick, who had been standing 2 feet to Oran's left the entire time, said nothing. The first hour was standard. Group formations, different configurations. The athletes in front, and everyone else arranged behind them. Oran stood where he was put and did what he was asked, and kept his expression neutral the way Leah had taught him to do on camera, when he wasn't sure what face to make. Then the photographer repositioned the group for the second setup, and put Oran and Urgi at the center. You two, she said, pointing, middle, face each other slightly. Not fully, just, yeah, like that. Good. Now look at the camera, but stay aware of each other. We're aware of each other, Urgi said. Professionally, Oran said. The photographer grinned. Her assistant made a note on a tablet. They shot that configuration for 40 minutes. The photographer kept finding new angles. At one point she asked them to have a conversation while she shot. something natural. What do you want us to talk about? Oren asked. Anything, she said. Argue about something. You clearly have opinions. We're fine, Orgy said. We're completely fine, Oren agreed. She shot them saying that. Those ended up being some of the best frames of the day, which neither of them found out until the campaign went live 6 weeks later. The break between setups was 20 minutes. Frederick handed Oren his coffee. He'd gotten a second one from the craft table at some point and stood shoulder to shoulder with him, a familiar wall. You're doing well, Frederick said. I'm just standing here, Oren said. That's what doing well looks like in this context. Oren watched Orgy across the room. He was back with the athletes, all charming and loud, being the center of whatever conversation was happening. The mask was back up, or maybe it had never been down. Oren couldn't tell yet which version was the performance. He's not what I thought he'd be, Oren said, mostly to himself. What did you think he'd be? Frederick said. I don't know. More insufferable. Less, he stopped. Less what? Frederick said. Never mind, Oren said. Frederick looked at Orgy. Then he looked at Oren. His expression didn't change. Don't read into it, he said. He has a reputation. I'm not reading into anything, Oren said. I said he wasn't what I expected. That's an observation. Okay, Frederick said. Oren let the topic die off. Orgy stopped beside him at the edge of the setup area, waiting for the photographer to finish adjusting the light. So you really just showed up, Orgy said, for a modeling shoot, but you're not a model. Frederick needed someone, Oren said. Frederick needed someone, and he called his Omega friend, who does a podcast. And it's working out fine. It's working out great, Orgy said. That's the problem. Now they're going to want you back. Oren looked at him. Would that be a problem? He said. Orgy looked back. Something crossed his face that was gone before Oren could read it. For the campaign? No, Orgy said. Probably not. The photographer called them back in. Oren moved first. He didn't look back to see if Orgy was watching him go, because that would have been reading into things, and he wasn't doing that. Frederick texted Jordan from the car on the way home. Running late. Don't wait up. Jordan had already eaten. He was learning his lines for next week's episode, sitting on Frederick's couch in the quiet that had become familiar enough to feel like his own. He read the text, set his phone down, and went back to the script. He didn't ask how the shoot went. Frederick didn't offer. That was how most of their evenings worked. 6 weeks later, Media Awards season. The ceremony was at a venue downtown, the kind of event that required special attention. Not the red carpet scale of the industry awards Oren had been to with his ex, but significant enough that he spent 40 minutes on his outfit and then changed it. Frederick picked him up at 7. You look good, Frederick said when Oren got in the car. You always say that, Oren said. You always look good, Frederick said. Oren looked out the window. The city moved past, lit up and restless. He had been nominated for Best Independent Commentary Podcast, which his listeners had celebrated loudly, and which Oren had received quietly, the way he received most good things since the breakup, with one hand already braced for the catch. His ex had a way of attaching himself to Oren's good moments retroactively, making them smaller in memory. Oren was working on not letting him do that. You're in your head, Frederick said. I'm fine, Oren said. I know, you're also in your head. Oren looked at him. Frederick kept his eyes on the road. I'm good, Oren said, more firmly. Tonight is good. I'm letting it be good. Okay, Frederick said. He reached over and turned the music up slightly. Oren appreciated it. The venue was already full when they arrived. Oren did the press line, answered the same 3 questions he always got asked at these things, smiled for photos, and then found the bar. Urgy was at the bar. He was in a dark suit, no tie, looking at his phone with the distracted energy of someone waiting for a conversation to start. He looked up when Oren appeared beside him, and his expression did the thing it had done at the shoot, quick, present, then smoothed back over. We keep ending up in the same places, Urgy said. It's a small industry, Oren said. Sports commentary and pop culture don't usually overlap this much. And yet here we are, Urgy said. The bartender arrived. Urgy gestured for Oren to order first, which Oren did. And then Urgi ordered the same thing, which Oren noticed and filed away before he could think about why he was filing it. Congratulations on the nomination, Urgi said. Oren looked at him. Genuine, Urgi said. Not a setup. You earned it. Thank you, Oren said. That might be the first nice thing you've said about my work. I said your response to my comment was 7 minutes long, Urgi said. That was an observation about your commitment. I'm a generous person, Urgi said with a smile. Oren laughed before he could stop himself. It was a real one, short and surprising, and Urgi's smile changed when it happened, became less performed and more genuine. Then someone touched Oren's arm from behind. He turned. It was one of the event coordinators, a woman he half recognized, smiling with an edge that meant something was wrong, or someone unwanted was nearby. Just wanted to give you a heads up, she said quietly. Darian is here. He's on the other side of the room, but I thought you'd want to know. Oren's whole body went still. Darian, his ex, who had told Oren in the last conversation they'd had that Oren's podcast was something he did because he wasn't talented enough for anything else. Who had also said a number of other things that Oren was still, 14 months later, in the process of unhearing. Thanks, Oren said. His voice came out even. He was proud of that. The coordinator moved on. Oren set down his drink and took out his phone. Frederick picked up on the second ring. Where are you? Oren said. Press line, almost done. What happened? Nothing, just when you're done. 2 minutes, Frederick said, and hung up. Oren looked at his phone. Then he looked up and found Urgi watching him with an expression that was careful and quiet and observant. You okay? Urgi said. I'm fine, Oren said. Urgi didn't push it. He stayed where he was until Frederick appeared at Oren's side 3 minutes later. Frederick came in smoothly, hand going immediately to the small of Oren's back. We can go, Frederick said. Say the word. I'm not leaving because he's here, Oren said. I'm nominated. I'm staying. Okay, Frederick said. His hand stayed where it was. Oren felt himself exhale. Urgi watched Frederick's hand on Oren's back. Then he picked up his drink and looked at the room. Congratulations again, he said to Oren, on the nomination. He moved off into the crowd before Oren could respond. Oren watched him go. Frederick steered him toward their table. The after-party was on the venue's rooftop. Oren had won Best Independent Commentary, which he'd accepted with a speech he'd prepared, and then abandoned halfway through in favor of something unrehearsed that got a better reaction anyway. Frederick had watched from the audience, with his phone in his hand, not filming, just holding it. On the rooftop, an hour into the party, Oren was talking to Leah when he noticed Frederick and Urgi across the space, standing slightly apart from the rest of the crowd. Not arguing, just talking, with the careful energy of two people who were being polite and meant every word of it as a warning. Oren watched for a moment. Leah followed his gaze. That's the undefeated guy, she said. Yeah, Oren said. He came and congratulated you earlier, she said. I saw. He was at the bar, Oren said. He also watched you give your speech from the back of the room, Leah said. I'm just saying. You're reading into things, Oren said. I'm a producer, Leah said. Reading into things is the job. Oren looked away from Frederick and Urgi and back at Leah. Nothing is happening, he said. Obviously, Leah said, in the tone she used when she meant the opposite. Frederick came home at midnight. Jordan was still up, which was unusual, sitting at the kitchen table with a script and a cup of tea that had gone cold. You won, Jordan said. Well, Oren won. I saw it online. He was great, Frederick said, setting his keys down. The speech was, yeah, he was great. Jordan looked at him. You okay? Fine, Frederick said. Why are you still up? Waiting for you, Jordan said. Frederick looked at him for a brief moment. You don't have to do that, Frederick said. I know, Jordan said. I wanted to. Frederick picked up his keys again and set them in the bowl by the door, which was something he did when he didn't know what else to do with his hands. There was someone there tonight, he said. Someone Oren used to. He stopped. It was fine. He was fine. I just wanted to make sure. And is he? Yeah, Frederick said. He won. He's fine. Jordan nodded. He picked up the cold tea and took it to the sink. Good, he said. That's good. Frederick stood in the kitchen for a moment after Jordan had gone to bed. He turned off the light and went to bed. At the baby shower, the room has gotten quieter without anyone deciding to make it quieter. People are listening. "So you won," Demi says. "I won," Oren says, "and I spent half the after-party watching Frederick and Urgi have the most polite standoff I've ever seen in my life." "What were they talking about?" someone asks from across the room. "I have no idea," Oren says. "I asked Frederick later, and he said nothing important. I asked Urgi much later, and he said," he looks over his shoulder at Urgi. "I said it was a nice event," Urgi says. "He said it was a nice event," Oren repeats. "It was a nice event," Urgi says again. Oren shakes his head. The room laughs. Urgi picks up his drink, unbothered. I hope you are enjoying this story so far. Who is your favorite character in the story? Don't forget to like and subscribe. Chapter 3. Frequency. At the baby shower, someone brought out a second round of food. Oren accepts a plate without interrupting himself. "Okay, so the panel," Demi says. "Tell me about the panel." "The panel," Oren says, "was Leah's idea, which I told her at the time, and she denied, and continues to deny any involvement to this day." Across the room, Leah looks up from her conversation. "I pitched it to the network," she says. "That's not the same as making it happen." "You pitched it," Oren says. "The network loved it," Leah says. "You're welcome." Oren looks at Demi. "She pitched it to the network," he says. 2 months after the awards. A media network panel. Cross-platform commentary in the modern landscape. 4 panelists, live audience, streamed online. Oren found out he'd been booked on the same panel as Urgi, the same way he found out most things. Leah told him, already 3 steps ahead, already managing his reaction before he'd had time to digest the news. "It's good content," Leah said. "The rivalry angle is already built in. You don't have to do anything except show up and be yourself." "Being myself is what got me into the comment section war," Oren said. "And your numbers went up 30%, Leah said. "Oren, trust me." He trusted her but also called Frederick just to make sure. "Don't do it," Frederick said. Leah already confirmed it, Oren said, following a long, pregnant pause. "Fine," Frederick said, "but I'm coming." "You're not on the panel." "I'll be in the audience," Frederick said, "in case you need to leave." "I'm not going to need to leave." "Just in case," Frederick said. Oren didn't argue. He knew better by now than to argue with Frederick about these things. It was easier to let him come and not need him than to tell him not to come and spend the whole panel aware of his absence. The panel was at a downtown studio, seats for 200, the kind of setup with a moderator and 4 chairs in a row, and an audience that had opinions. The other 2 panelists were a music journalist and a gaming content creator who both seemed relaxed about it. Urgi was already at the panelist table when Oren arrived. He's talking to the moderator, collar open, jacket on the back of the chair. He looked up when Oren walked in, and something in his posture shifted, just slightly, the way it always did. A recalibration Oren had started noticing without meaning to. "Unfiltered," Urgi said. "Undefeated," Oren said, and sat down 2 chairs over. The moderator looked between them with the energy of someone who had been promised conflict, and was pleased to see it arriving on schedule. The panel ran 90 minutes, and was, by any measure, good television. The first 30 minutes were standard: format, platforms, audience growth, the business of building an independent media voice. Oren and Urgi were professional and sharp, and occasionally talked over each other in the way that read as chemistry rather than conflict, which the audience responded to every time. Then the moderator asked about crossover appeal, whether sports commentary and pop culture commentary spoke to different audiences or the same one. "Different," Urgi said. "Sports audiences want analysis. They want the breakdown, the history, the numbers in context. They're not casual viewers." "Pop culture audiences aren't casual either," Oren said. "They're tracking narrative arcs, industry politics, the way public personas are constructed and dismantled. That's not lighter than sports analysis, it's just a different subject." "The subjects aren't equivalent," Urgi said. "Why not?" Oren said. The audience went quiet and paid close attention. Because sports outcomes are measurable, Urgi said. Win, lose, stats, record. Pop culture is what? Oren said. Urgi looked at him. Something shifted. It's more subjective, he said, less certainly than he'd started. So is sports analysis, Oren said. You make calls on player trajectory, coaching decisions, team chemistry. None of that is just numbers. You're reading people. So am I. We're doing the same job in different arenas. After a brief moment, that's, Urgi started. He stopped. That's actually a fair point. The audience laughed. The moderator looked delighted. Oren looked at Urgi and Urgi looked back, and the mask was down, fully, for the first time. Not performing, not compensating, just sitting with having been wrong about something and finding it, apparently, interesting rather than threatening. It lasted about 10 seconds. Then the moderator moved to the next question, and the panel continued. But Oren had seen it. Afterward, in the corridor outside the studio, the other panelists filtered out with their people, and the space cleared quickly. Oren was texting Leah. She'd already sent 4 messages, all variations of I told you so, when Urgi appeared beside him. Good panel, Urgi said. You conceded a point on live stream, Oren said. Your comment section is going to be hell. My comment section has thoughts about everything, Urgi said. I stopped reading it in 2021. Smart, Oren said. I have my moments, Urgi said. They were standing closer than the space required. Oren noticed this and didn't move. The thing you said, Urgi said, about reading people, do you actually think that's what you do? Like genuinely, not for the panel? Yeah, Oren said. That's what the show is. The celebrity stuff, the industry stuff, it's all just people making choices under pressure. That's interesting to me. The drama is the surface. What's underneath it is the actual story. Urgi was quiet for a moment, looking at him. That's how I think about athletes, he said. The game is the surface. I know, Oren said. I've listened to your show. You've listened to my show? Urgi said. Research, Oren said too quickly. Right, Urgi said. Research, huh? He was smiling. Oren looked at his phone so he had somewhere to look. Frederick appeared at the end of the corridor. He'd been in the audience, which meant he'd seen the whole panel and followed them out. His expression was composed and pleasant, and he walked toward them at a pace that was not hurried and somehow still felt like it was. Good panel, he said, to Oren. Then to Urgi, with the same pleasantness, good panel. Thanks, Urgi said. Frederick, right? We've crossed paths a few times now. A few, Frederick said. You do a lot of sports campaigns, Urgi said. I've seen your work. Same, Frederick said. The conversation had the surface temperature of a networking exchange and the actual temperature of something else entirely. Oren looked between them. Are we all up for drinks? He said. I have somewhere to be, Urgi said, and Oren couldn't tell if it was true. But, you free Thursday? There's a league preview event. Press and industry, pretty low-key. Could be content for you. He said it to Oren. Only to Oren. I'll check my schedule, Oren said. Text me, Urgi said, and handed him a card, which was such a deliberate old-school move that Oren almost laughed. You have my number now, not through a network booker. He nodded at Frederick, said it was good to see him again, and left. Oren looked at the card. Frederick looked at Oren looking at the card. You don't have to go, Frederick said. He said it could be content, Oren said. Oren. Frederick, it's a press event. I go to press events. That's the job. Frederick was quiet. He started. I know, Oren said, and added, I'm careful. I'm always careful now. Something moved across Frederick's face. He nodded. I know, he said. They went and got drinks, just the two of them, and didn't talk about Urgi again that night. Oren put the card in his jacket pocket and left it there. Jordan called Frederick that night at 11. Frederick picked up, which had become slightly more consistent in the last few weeks. Not reliable, but more than before. Jordan had noticed the shift without letting himself hope for more. How was the panel? Jordan said. Good, Frederick said. Oren was good. I watched the stream, Jordan said. He was great. The bit about reading people. Yeah, Frederick said. A pause. The other guy was good too, Jordan said. Urgi. He took the point well. The pause on Frederick's end was slightly longer than it needed to be. He's fine, Frederick said. I didn't say he wasn't, Jordan said. Another pause. Are you coming over this week? Jordan said. Probably Thursday, Frederick said. Maybe Friday. There is that league event Thursday, Jordan said hopefully. Frederick didn't respond to that immediately. Friday then, he said. Okay, Jordan said. He hung up and sat with the phone in his hand for a moment. The Thursday League preview event. It was low-key, in the way industry events called themselves low-key. 200 people, open bar, a DJ at a volume that suggested background music, but functioned as foreground. Oren went with Leah, which was a professional decision, and also a buffer, and found Urgi near the entrance, talking to a group of athletes he clearly knew well. Urgi spotted him across the room, and did the thing, the recalibration, the shift, and then crossed the space between them without it looking like he'd made a decision to. You came, he said. It's a press event, Oren said. You said it could be content. I did say that, Urgi said. Leah, this is Urgi, Oren said. Urgi, this is my producer Leah. She's why the podcast exists. He'd have figured it out eventually, Leah said, shaking Urgi's hand. Probably, Urgi agreed. Leah looked between them with the expression she had when she was up to something. I'm going to get a drink, she said. Oren, text me if you need me. She was gone before Oren could respond. Oren looked at Urgi. She's very efficient, Urgi said. She's terrifying, Oren said. I mean that with love. Urgi smiled. They got drinks, they talked. About the event, about the players present, about a trade rumor Urgi had sourced, that Oren had somehow also heard about from a completely different angle, which led to a 20-minute conversation about how information moved through different industries, and how the sources were often the same people, wearing different hats. It was the easiest conversation Oren had had in a long time. He thought about Darian once, then he stopped. They ended up outside on the venue terrace, late in the evening. The city spread out below them, the party noise muffled through the glass doors behind them. Leah had texted an hour ago that she was heading out, and that Oren should stay as long as he wanted, which was another thing she did when she'd already decided something. Can I ask you something? Urgi said. You can ask, Oren said. I reserve the right not to answer. Fair, Urgi said. The modeling campaign photos went live last week. Have you seen them? I've seen them, Oren said. You looked good, Urgi said. Oren looked at him. I mean it, Urgi said. You looked comfortable, like you belonged there even though you kept saying you weren't a model. I'm not a model, Oren said. You move like you know where you are in a room, Urgi said. That's most of it. Oren looked away for a moment. The comment, Oren said, the one that started all of this. Did you mean it, or was it just something that came out? Urgi was quiet for a moment. I meant it when I said it, he said. I don't mean it the same way now. What changed? Oren said. You did a 7-minute response that I couldn't actually argue with, Urgi said. And then I met you and you were… He stopped. What? Oren said. Not what I expected, Urgi said. Oren looked at him. The city lights were behind Urgi's shoulders, and the terrace was quiet, and Oren was aware that something was happening, and that he wasn't afraid of it. What did you expect? Oren said. Someone who needed the rivalry, Urgi said. Someone who was performing the whole time. You're not performing. That's… He stopped again. Oren watched him find the word and decide against it. Disarming, Urgi said finally. Oren laughed softly. You're not what I expected either, he said. What did you expect? Urgi said. Someone whose confidence was their whole personality, Oren said. It's not though, is it? The confidence is the outside layer. Urgi looked at him for a long moment. You really like to read people, huh? He said. That's the job, Oren said. The glass door behind them opened, and a group spilled out onto the terrace, loud and cheerful, and the moment opened up to let other people in. Urgi straightened. Oren stepped back slightly, but neither of them moved far. Frederick called at 10:30. Oren was still at the event. He stepped away from the crowd to answer. How is it? Frederick said. Good, Oren said. Leah left an hour ago. I'm still here. With Urgi, Frederick said. Not a question. With a lot of people, Oren said. It's an event. Oren. Frederick, I'm fine. I'll call you when I get home. Silence for a moment. Okay, Frederick said. Call me when you're home. He hung up. Oren stood with the phone for a second, and then went back inside. Urgi was where he'd left him, talking to someone, but he tracked Oren coming back across the room the same way he always noticed him. He'd been noticing for a while. He got another drink and went to find him. Jordan didn't wait up on Thursday. He'd done a theater performance that ran late and came home tired, but in a good way. The way he only got tired after he'd been fully present in something for hours. He made tea, sat on his own couch in his own apartment, and watched 30 minutes of something he'd been meaning to watch for weeks. Frederick texted at midnight, "How was the show?" Jordan looked at the message. He thought about how Frederick never came to the shows. Had been invited 4 times, and said he'd try to make it. Hadn't made it once. Jordan had stopped mentioning it because the outcome was the same and was too painful to bear. He typed back, "Good. You should come sometime." Frederick replied, "Yeah, for sure." Jordan set his phone face down and finished his tea. At the baby shower, Demi has her chin in her hand. "So the terrace conversation," she says, "that was the turning point." "That was a turning point," Oren says, "but honestly, there were several." "How many turning points does one story need?" someone asks. "As many as it takes," Urgi says from behind Oren, "when one of the people involved is extremely stubborn." "I was careful," Oren says. "You were careful," Urgi agrees, "and stubborn. Both can be true." Oren looks at Demi. "There was a trip," he says. "That's the next part." Something in the room shifts. Demi sits up straighter. "Tell me about the trip. Hurry," she says. Chapter 4. Signal. At the baby shower, Demi has pulled her chair closer. Someone has turned the music down without anyone asking. "The trip," Demi says. "The trip," Arun says. "Okay, so, a network reached out to both our shows about doing a joint feature. A weekend content piece about 2 commentators from different worlds covering the same event. There was a major sports gala that season that also had a pretty significant pop culture crossover. Red carpet, performances, athletes and artists in the same room. Our audiences overlapped more than either of us had admitted publicly." "And you said yes," Demi says. "Leah said yes," Arun says. From across the room, "You said yes first," Leah calls. Arun points at her. "She's lying," he says, to the room. "I have the email," Leah says. Urgi's hand finds Arun's shoulder, worn and steady. Arun reaches up and covers it without thinking. "Fine," Arun says. "I said yes first. Are you happy?" "Very," Demi says. 6 weeks after the league event. A city 4 hours away by plane. 2 nights, 1 event. The hotel was nice. Genuinely good. Not excessive. Arun had a room on the 14th floor, with a window that looked out over a lit-up skyline he didn't recognize yet, but liked immediately. Urgi's room was 3 doors down, which Arun knew because they'd checked in at the same time and walked the same corridor, and Urgi had stopped at his door and said, "See you at the briefing at 9, and Arun had said, "Sure," and then stood in his own room for 10 minutes, doing nothing in particular. Frederick had called twice on the way to the airport. Arun had answered once, on the second call, and kept it short, because there was nothing to say that wouldn't have turned into a longer conversation he didn't have time for and wasn't sure he wanted to have. "Call me when you land," Frederick had said. "I always do," Arun had said. He hadn't called when he landed. He'd texted instead. The briefing at 9 was with the network producer, a brisk woman named Camille, who had clearly run this kind of shoot before and had no interest in spending more time on logistics than necessary. She walked them through the event schedule, the content structure, what she needed from each of them. "The together pieces are the draw," she said. "Your audiences have been watching you circle each other for months. Give them something real, not manufactured conflict. You've both done enough of that. Something that shows why this collaboration makes sense." "What does that look like?" Urgi asked. "Honest conversation on camera," Camille said, "which I think you're both capable of." She looked at them. "The chemistry is already there. Don't perform it, just let it be there." She left them with the schedule and a call time for the afternoon. Arun and Urgi sat at the briefing table quietly. "She's not wrong," Urgi said. "About which part?" Arun said. "Any of it," he said. The first day was the event itself, the gala, the red carpet, the performances. They covered it separately for their own feeds, and together for the network piece, moving through the same spaces with Camille's small crew behind them, talking on camera about what they were seeing, and occasionally, naturally, talking to each other about it. It worked better than either of them had framed it to themselves as being likely to work. There was a moment on the red carpet, a musician Arun knew well walking past, and Arun leaned over to Urji and sent something in his ear without thinking. Context, background, the story behind the public image. And Urji listened, and then asked a follow-up question that was sharper than Arun expected. And the exchange lasted 40 seconds, and ended with both of them looking at the camera and realizing Camille had caught all of it. "That," Camille said from behind the camera. "More of that." Urji looked at Arun. Arun looked at Urji. "More of that," Urji repeated, smiling. Arun looked away first. After the event, late in the evening, the crew wrapped up and Camille released them for the night. The city outside was still buzzing. Arun stood in the hotel lobby not quite ready to go upstairs, and Urji stood beside him with his jacket over one arm. "Food," Urji said. "The hotel restaurant is still open." "It's almost midnight," Arun said. "They have a late menu," Urji said. "I checked." Arun looked at him. "You checked the hotel restaurant hours in advance?" he said. "I check things," Urji said. "I like to be thorough." "You called your show Undefeated, and your main personality trait is being thorough?" "One of them," Urji said. "You coming?" The restaurant was dim and almost empty. They got a corner table and ordered too much food and ate most of it anyway, because the event had been long and neither of them had eaten properly since the afternoon. The conversation moved the way it had on the terrace. Easy, no performance required. They talked about the gala, about the people they'd seen, about the weird specific experience of covering an event you were also technically attending. And then, somewhere in the second hour, it went somewhere else. "Can I ask you something?" Oren said. "And you can say no if it's too much." "Ask away," Urji said. "The thing you said at the terrace, about the previous relationship. You only mentioned it once, and I didn't push it then." Urji was quiet for a moment, turning his glass. "We were together for 2 years, he said. "She was a model. We met at a campaign, which you'd think I'd have learned something from, given how we met. It ended badly. Not dramatically, just badly. She wanted someone who was going to be present, and I was everywhere except where I should have been. Always on, always performing, always the loudest thing in the room. She told me I was exhausting to love." He said it without self-pity, just as a fact. "I think she was right," he said. "I didn't know how to be still. I'm still working on it." Orun looked at him. "You're still right now," he said. Urji looked up. "Yeah," he said, "I am." Orun looked at the table, then back up. "My last relationship," he said. "He was an actor, an alpha. We were together for almost 1.5 years, and for most of it I was managing him. His moods, his narrative about me, what I was allowed to say publicly, and what I wasn't. By the end, I had gotten so good at making myself smaller that I didn't notice I'd done it, until it was over, and I had all this space again, and I didn't know what to do with it." He paused. "I've been careful since then," he said. "Maybe too careful, although Frederick thinks I'm not careful enough." "What do you think?" Urji said. "I think being careful kept me safe," Orun said. "I'm just not sure what it's keeping me from now." Urji held his gaze. "I'm not going to manage you," he said. "I don't want a smaller version of you. I want the 7-minute version." Orun laughed, sudden and real. "That's the line you went with?" he said. "It's a good line," Urji said. "It's a terrible line," Orun said. "And yet," Urji said, "and yet." Orun was still smiling. Urji was watching him smile with the expression he had when he'd decided something and hadn't said it yet. The restaurant was almost empty now. Their table was an island. "I bought something 3 weeks ago," Urji said, abruptly. "Before this trip. I was going to tell you, but because the timing was wrong, and I couldn't work up the courage." Orun looked at him. "What did you buy?" he said. "Something small," Urji said. "Something that requires a conversation I'm not ready to have yet, because my confidence breaks down in exactly the places it should matter most, and I'm working on that." Orun studied him. "That's very honest," Orun said. "I'm trying something new," Urji said. They looked at each other across the table, and the weight of the something Urji had bought weighed between them. "Okay," Orun said. "Okay," Urji said. Orun reached across the table. Urgi turned his hand over and held it. They stayed like that until the last staff member politely informed them the kitchen had closed. They didn't talk on the way back to the corridor. Outside Orun's door, they stopped. Urgi looked at him. The performed confidence was gone, and what was underneath it was something quieter and more certain. "I'm not in a hurry," Urgi said. "I want you to know that. Whatever pace works for you." "I know," Orun said. "I mean it. I am not just saying that." "I know that too," Orun said. He reached up and touched the side of Urgi's face. Urgi went very still. His eyes dropped to Orun's mouth and came back up. "Come inside," Orun said. Urgi exhaled slowly. "Are you sure?" he said. "I'm careful," Orun said. "Not scared. There's a difference." Urgi's hand came up to cover Orun's where it rested against his jaw. "Yeah," he said, "there is." Orun opened the door. What happened after was slow and honest, and nothing like the version of this Orun had talked himself out of for months. At some point late in the night, Orun lay in the dark with the city lights through the window, and Urgi's arm across his waist, and thought, this is what it's supposed to feel like. He fell asleep before he could overthink it. The second day was lighter. The network shoot wrapped by noon. They walked around the city in the afternoon without a plan, which was something Urgi apparently did, and Orun apparently needed more of. They found food at a place that had no online presence and was excellent. They argued, briefly and cheerfully, about a film Orun had covered and Urgi had opinions about. Orun won. Urgi disputed the win on technical grounds. On the plane home, they sat next to each other, and Orun fell asleep on Urgi's shoulder, somewhere over the first hour, and woke up to Urgi reading something on his phone. Unbothered, one earbud in, the other ear open. "You could have moved," Orun said. "You were comfortable," Urgi said, without looking up. Orun settled back against his shoulder and went back to sleep. Frederick came by that evening. Orun let him in, made tea, and sat across from him in the living room, where they'd sat 100 times. Frederick looked at him, and Orun looked back and didn't offer anything. "Must have been a good trip, I guess," Frederick said. "Good trip," Orun said. Frederick turned his cup in his hands. "He's not Darien," Frederick said. "I know that. I'm not saying he is." "I know you're not," Orun said. Frederick stopped, started again. "I've been the person who was here when Darien happened. I was the one who—" "I know," Orun said, gently. "Frederick, I know, and that matters to me. You matter to me. That's not changing." Frederick looked at him. "But," he said, "but I'm not going to not do this because you're worried," Orun said. "I've been careful. I've been careful for a year. I'm okay. And this," he paused, "this feels okay. Different okay. Not performing okay. Actually okay." Frederick was quiet for a long time. Orun watched him sit with it. Watched the thing Frederick never named move across his face and settle. "I just don't want you to get hurt again," Frederick said. "I know," Orun said. "I love you for it, and I need you to let me figure this out." Frederick nodded. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't all the way there, but it was a nod, and Orun took it. They finished their tea. Frederick stayed for another hour, and they watched something stupid on TV. Jordan called Frederick that night at 10. Frederick picked up on the first ring, which was new. "Hey," Jordan said. "Hey," Frederick said. "How was the show tonight?" Jordan went quiet for a second. "You remembered," he said. "You mentioned it last week," Frederick said. "How was it?" "Good," Jordan said. "Really good, actually. Full house." The director said. He stopped himself. "Sorry, you probably don't want the whole debrief." "I do," Frederick said. "Tell me." Another pause. Longer this time. "Frederick," Jordan said. "Yeah," Frederick said. "What's happening right now?" Jordan said. "With you. Something's different." Frederick was quiet. "Orun's okay," Frederick said finally. "He met someone. I think he's actually okay. Like genuinely." "That's good," Jordan said. "Yeah," Frederick said. "It is." A pause. I think there are things I haven't been paying attention to, that I should have been paying attention to, that I want to pay attention to." Jordan sat very still on his end of the phone. "Okay," he said. "The show," Frederick said. "Tell me about the show." Jordan told him. Frederick listened, not waiting for his turn to speak, actually listening. Jordan talked for 20 minutes, and Frederick asked questions, and it was, Jordan thought, the most present Frederick had ever been in a conversation with him. He didn't let himself build too much on it, but he didn't dismiss it either. 5 weeks later, Orun stared at the test on the bathroom counter for a long time. Then he sat down on the edge of the tub and stared at it some more. He and Urji had been something, not labeled yet, because Orun had asked for time, and Urji had said okay and meant it. They were together in all the ways that mattered, and not yet in the one way that required a serious conversation, which Orun had been aware was coming, and had been letting himself approach it at his own pace. His pace had apparently not been the relevant variable. He picked up his phone, put it down, picked it up again. He called Urji. Urji picked up on the second ring. "Hey," Urji said. I need you to come over," Orun said. "I'm on my way," Urji said. Orun sat on the edge of the tub and waited, and tried not to run the numbers on every possible outcome. Urji knocked 20 minutes later. Orun let him in. He didn't say anything. He just held up the test. Urji looked at it. Then he looked at Orun. His expression did something complicated and quiet, and then it settled into something steady. He reached into the pocket of his jacket. He put a small box on the kitchen counter. Orun looked at the box, then at Urji. "You said you bought something 3 weeks before the trip," Orun said. "I did," Urji said. "And you've been carrying it around since then?" "In my jacket, yes. I kept almost saying something, and then not." "For 2 months?" Orun said. "My confidence breaks down in exactly the places it should matter most," Urji said. "I told you I was working on it." Orun looked at the box. "This is the worst proposal setup in recorded history," he said. "I know," Urji said. "I had a plan. The plan was better than this." "What happened to the plan?" Orun said. "You happened to the plan," Urji said. "You called, and I could hear something in your voice, and I came. The plan can happen later. The question is now." Orun looked at him. Urji looked back, steady. "I love you," Urji said. "I have for a while. I'm not asking because of—" He gestured at the test. "I'm asking because I was going to ask anyway, and this just moved the timeline." Orun sat down on the couch. Urji sat beside him. "I love you too," Orun said. "I've been careful about saying it." "I know," Urji said. "I've been waiting." "You didn't say anything," Orun said. "You needed the time," Urji said. "I had the ring. I wasn't going anywhere." Orun looked at the box on the counter. Then he looked at Urji. "Yes," he said. Urji exhaled like he'd been holding it for 2 months. Orun laughed, and Urji laughed, and it was loud in the small apartment. Urji opened the box. The ring was simple and exactly right, and Orun would tell people later that he cried a little, which Urji would confirm, which Orun would then dispute. Frederick found out 3 days later, from Orun, over tea in the same living room. Orun told him everything: the trip, the 2 months, the box in the jacket pocket, the test, the proposal on the couch with no plan. Frederick listened without interrupting, which was not always his way. When Orun finished, Frederick was quiet for a long time. "Are you happy?" he said. "Yeah," Orun said. "I really am." Frederick nodded. He looked at his cup. "I owe you an apology," he said. I've been holding on to something that wasn't mine to hold. I didn't see it clearly until recently. I'm sorry." Orun looked at him. "Frederick," he said. "I'm not saying it to make it your problem," Frederick said. You deserve to know that I see it, and that I'm working on it." Orun reached over and put his hand over Frederick's. "You've been my best friend for 13 years, Orun said. "That's not going anywhere. You just have to let me have my happiness too." Frederick turned his hand over and held Orun's for a moment. "Yeah," he said. "I know." He stayed for dinner. When he left, he called Jordan. Jordan picked up. "I want to come to the show," Frederick said. "Next weekend, if that's still—" Jordan said quickly. There was a brief pause on the call. "I have a lot of things I should have said," Frederick said. "I don't know if it's too late." "I don't know either," Jordan said. "But you can start with the show." "Okay," Frederick said. "The show." He hung up and stood outside for a moment, before he started walking. At the baby shower, the room is very quiet. Demi has her hand over her mouth. Someone across the room is pretending not to have gotten emotional. Leah is not pretending. He had the ring for 2 months, Demi says. 2 months, Oren confirms. In his jacket. Every day, Urgi says from behind Oren. I'm just saying, that's commitment. That's anxiety, Oren says. It's both, Urgi says. Oren shakes his head. Urgi bends down and presses a kiss to the top of his head, unhurried, easy, like he's been doing it for years. So that's it, Demi says. That's the whole story. That's the whole story, Oren says, from comment section war to here. He looks down at his stomach. The room laughs. Someone starts the music back up. The baby shower resumes around them, warm and loud, full of people who know most of the story, and a few who are hearing it for the first time, and one small person who will hear it many more times before they fully understand it. Urgi's hand stays on Oren's shoulder, while Oren reaches up and covers it. Quote of the week. For one human being to love another, that is perhaps the most difficult of all our tasks. Rainer Maria Rilke. Thank you for listening to Static and Signal. Hope you enjoyed this story. If you want to hear more, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. New stories are uploaded every Friday.